In this video, we're going to begin blocking out our animation. Alright, so basically I'm going to set up an initial pass on how I want my arm to move. And at this point, I don't want to be concerned with the constraints that I'm going to be using to lift the box object that the mechanical arm is going to be lifting, but rather just with the movement of the arm to making sure that it's hitting the right marks that I need it to hit. Alright, so I think that what I'm going to do, and again, you might want to conceptualize this a little bit before you start working, is that my mechanical arm is going to start at 45 degrees here at the middle, and then it's going to move to the left here. Alright, and then it's going to extend this arm down, and the claws are going to kind of close on the object. Going to lift it back up, rotate 90 degrees on this direction. Okay, then the claw is going to come down, release the box, go back, the claw is going to go back up, and then it's going to rotate 45 degrees and go back to the initial position that we started. Alright, so that's the initial animation that I want to create. And I don't want to be concerned with timing right now. I want to be, again, the first pass, I want to make sure that I'm hitting the right marks at the beginning. Alright, now I also got to be kind of I'm going to be using for the most part these controls. I don't think these are going to do much for me at this point, or for what I decided to do. So I'm going to start with my initial position. But again, one of the things that you got to keep in mind is that the way that I set this up, okay, is that for the claw to get to this point where it's holding on to the box that it's initially lifting up, all I have to do is go back to each one of these controls and make sure that all of my attributes are at 0. Alright, and again, that's kind of the way I planned it out. Okay, and again, I hope if you've gotten to this point, you've kind of thought about doing it this way. So again, let's begin. So this control, again, it rotates this joint, and everything else that's parented to it's going to follow along. So I wanted my initial movement for this going to be at 45 degrees here. Alright. So one of the things that I want to start doing right here, again, is making sure that I set keyframes for these things. And I am going to be using a combination of both the auto key and just setting keyframes as I do things. Okay. So let me start with the technique of just setting keyframes as I'm doing them. Alright, so I just rotated this, okay, and I want to be at frame, let's just do 0 to 48 right now. And I'm gonna do every pose every 5 frames. Okay, and again, I'm not concerned with the timing of the animation right now. I'm more concerned about making sure that I'm hitting the marks that I need to hit. So I'm gonna select this control and click on S. Alright, that means to set up a keyframe for all of these attributes at this point, at frame 1 here. Alright, now I also need to make sure that this piece is up like this. Okay, again, because when he rotates, I don't want the claws to go through the box here. So this is gonna have to go up. Okay, and again, if I want it to go back to its original position, all I have to do is type a 0 here on the translate Y. But we'll have it selected. I'm just gonna click on S, and that sets a keyframe. Okay, I'm also gonna keep my claws open. Let's just do, again, 60 degrees here on the X, 60 degrees on this one, on the negative X, Alright, so again, that looks about right. So I'm going to set a keyframe. So S. Okay, so I've set up an initial keyframe for all of the main posts that I have right here. The next movement, it's going to be at frame 5, and it's basically going to rotate 45 degrees in this direction, okay, and then it's going to stop there for a second and then kind of bring down the claw, okay. So again, making sure that I've set keyframes for the main parts that are moving here, okay, which again is this joint, this one that moves the wrist up and down, and then a keyframe for each one of the claws, okay. So at 5, and again, this is arbitrary, you can kind of move your keyframes around wherever you want. I'm just going to stick to every 5. I'm going to select this joint, and again, I'm going to rotate this back at 0 because it needs to back to its initial position, okay. And I'm going to click on S to set a keyframe for that rotation to happen at this point. So if I were to scroll back, it's going to do this. So and again, at this point I need the mechanical arm to stop, so the position of this piece and the 2 claws need to stay where it is. So I'm going to select them, and I'm going to set another keyframe at 5 for each one of them. That's going to assure that they stay in place at least until I do the next movement. Alright, so it's basically doing this. Then at 10, okay, it's gonna bring this down. So I'm gonna select this, and again, it was initially set up, so all I have to do is kind of bring it back to 0 to be in the right position, okay. And I'm gonna click on S, so it sets a keyframe for that movement. Alright, and I want the claws to stay in place until the next movement. So I'm going to click on S here, okay. So it's going to move here, then it's going to bring that down, and then on the next movement I want the claws to close, okay. So again, initially this was a -60, so I'm going to bring it back to 0. Same with this one. Alright, so at this point it's going to be picking up the box, and again, we're not concerned with the constraint that's going to take care of the object being lifted up. So the box is going to stay in place for right now. All we're concerned with is the movement of the mechanical arm. Alright, and also keep in mind that we're kind of using a linear technique here, where we're just going kind of step by step, rather than creating a pose here and then one at the end and then doing the in-betweens. For something mechanical like this, it makes more sense for us to do it this way. So here, and then it closes. Oh, I didn't set a keyframe for the claws closing. So again, make sure that you're doing that, otherwise the movements are not going to be animated. So let's just bring this back to 0. I'm going to select both controls, and I'm going to click on S, and it's going to set a keyframe here. Alright, so if I scroll in my timeline, come here, 5, then at 10 goes down, then at 15 it closes. Alright, at 20 I want this part to go up while holding the box, but again, we're not concerned with that, with the constraint of the box right now. But another thing that you need to keep in mind is that at 15 there is no keyframe for this mechanical arm to kind of go back to stay in place. Alright, so if I want this to go back to the Y movement right here, alright, and I set a keyframe, it's going to be going up the whole time rather than just starting from frame 15 on. So I want to make sure that it stays in this place, it stays at this place at frame 15, and it only starts moving up afterwards. So I'm just going to take this keyframe right here, copy it, and then go to 15 and paste it, and then goes up. Alright, and again, we're not thinking about the timing right now. This is a little fast, but we're just thinking about the poses, or the right, or making sure that the mechanical arm is hitting the right poses. So it moves, comes down, closes, alright, then it's gonna go up, alright, and once it's up at this point, then it needs to rotate 90 degrees at this location. Now keep in mind, again, we're not concerned with the constraints, and usually in any animation that's going to require some sort of constraint, you want to have the animation done before you do the constraint, okay? Because otherwise it could mess things up for you really badly. Alright, so at this point it's gone up. Then at frame 25, I want to take this and rotate it 90 degrees in this direction. Alright, and let's just make sure I go to the Y here and do 90. Alright, and again, this change is not going to happen unless I set a keyframe. But another thing that I need to keep in mind is that I haven't set a keyframe for any of these for any other time except for frame 5 over here. So again, if I were to set a keyframe at 25, this whole time is going to be moving to the side before it lifts the box the way I want to. So I want to make sure that at frame 20, the rotation for this control is still at that position. So again, I'm going to come here, copy this keyframe, go to frame 20, paste that keyframe. Alright, so again, it's going to stay in place, lift it up, and only start turning when the box already up, being held by the box and then turning. Alright, then at this point we want to bring the box down. Okay, so we have a keyframe here. It probably needs to stay in place for a little bit before it starts going down, so I probably want to have a keyframe for this control as well at this point. So I'm just going to click on S on 25. Alright, then I'm going to go to frame 30. Okay, and that's when this is going to go down. Alright, and again, I can just copy and paste the last keyframe where the arm was up, which was frame 10 here. So I'm just going to copy it, 30, paste it. Okay, and again, we're not concerned with the timing of our animation, because there is a lot more animation that we still need to kind of bring in here. I'm more concerned about making sure that it's hitting the right notes before I start editing my animation. So at 30 is going to go down. Alright, then I want the claws to just kind of stay in place as well at this point. And again, we haven't had any keyframes on the claw since frame 15, so I can copy it and paste it from frame 15, or I can just click on S. Alright, that's going to ensure the claws stay in place until frame 30. Then at frame 35 they're going to open up, and this was 60 I believe, and the other one was -60. Alright, and again we want to make sure we're setting keyframes for this, so S and S. So it brings it down, open up, and again at this point it leaves the box in place. Alright, the next movement that I want to do is make sure that this arm comes back up. Okay, because again essentially it needs to be back at this position. Alright, because it's finished with this, it's gonna finish with what it's doing. So it's gonna open up 35. We also want it to maybe be up at this point, so I can always go back and copy that keyframe just to make it easier for me. Alright, so it drops the box, opens, goes up, and then at frame 40 again I'm just doing every 5, this joint is going to rotate back to 45 degrees here. Alright, but again notice that there hasn't been any keyframe set since 25, so we want to make sure that at 35 there's at least a copy of the last keyframe we created there. So copy, paste, then we go to 40, and I'm just going to rotate Y to 45 one more time and press on S, so it sets a keyframe for that movement. Okay, alright, so in essence if I were to, I want to select all the controls here just so I can see the keyframes here, and I'm going to be using my playback controls, and I'm going to be using the step forward one key at a time. Alright, just to show you what we did here. So we started at our default position here. It went to this location, it went down, it closed the claws, then went back up again, rotated 90 degrees to this position. Okay, then it brought the box down. Once it left it in place, it kind of came back up, and at the same time it opened the claws, and then it kind of went back to its original position. Alright, so what we just did is what's called blocking. Okay, and we did it somewhat in a linear fashion where we're just kind of going step by step. In the next video we're going to start talking about how we go about and fix the timing of our animation, because if I was to play this, it's going to be very quick. Alright, and again this is not very appealing, so once we have our animation blocked up, then we can start working on our timing and make sure that it looks the proper way, the way it's supposed to look. Okay, so this concludes this video.